During the pentagram rite, there was a white flash outside that revealed something, but I'm not sure what. In the first set of vibrations, the part of the fixture with the light, its bowl with the fake flame, halfway filled with green. And then, in the second set of vibrations, a presence started to build in the space from the northeast to the southeast and enclosed forward. And then I saw like a wall, but it was squares with space in between, semi-bright blue squares. And then I saw them forming intersecting rows as well. Much like a perfectly square city, you could say, with equal sized cubes of skyscrapers. What I mean, cube on top of cube on top of cube would be the shape of the blocks. And in the fourth set of vibrations as well, there was a moment of stillness, total quiet. And with the fifth set of vibrations, I saw in the shadows a moving green. All pain disappears. With the final reading, the tinkliness continued to build. With the final scrying, I saw in between the shadows a lighter blue which rippled on the edges like waves that pointed towards the candle and the book. The Lords. Notes on Vision by James Douglas Morrison reminds us of the familiar and the stranger. Now we know that the familiar is more likely to be the overall danger, the overall harm, while the stranger may, per incident of exposure, be more likely towards that. But over a lifetime, it's usually the familiar ones. Mere entertainment is like a type of vampirism, isn't it? But it's an unaware sort of vampirism where you just sit there and be entertained by the movie or whatever. Current life makes us think of ancient ways and ancient things. The special effects are the new magic. It is deeper in terms of mystical experience. But the limited view through the media becomes as our God. Sometimes it's the craziest things about an individual that most prove their humanity. Religion has been pigeonholed. We want to represent it or replace it. I disagree about the point of tarot, but not in its general approach. The point of tarot as a distraction, that's what it is for most people. Even if they say it's spiritual and all that, they're not using it for development. It's not about a deeper thing. At most, if it's not, they're trying to get control of others through it, perhaps themselves. Maybe it's just a feel-good thing and like they're not really doing the work with it. Secular card games and other such things amount to the same too. We do not totally control our reality. And we go through life and we, as the soul, in some way, are freed by death. But perhaps might we free ourselves now in terms of our understanding and not wait till death for the games to stop, at least our part in the games. An American prayer is also one of those that remind us of the system. A system that could be a nightmare here and hereafter. We are promised in the old ways for a new way, but will we take it? Do we turn to the wider, or do we do well with the specific? People tend to want too many friends, but there's the opposite sex. And a good partner there is like all the friends that you need. It may be better to be able to express rather than just merge into the wild. Life interrupts plans. It interrupts and disrupts understanding. Are we stuck in the reality of something temporary that we'll use and discard? Some find their best life in terms of the constantly active. Sometimes we must just go on. And like I said before, in a way, Jim Morrison is the American Sufi, because when it came to having wealth, for him it was about continuing creativity rather than having fancy things to point to. Ode to LA. Well, it's an area overwhelmed by nature, yet distinct from nature, toxic from nature, full of evil, but referencing good. Jim Morrison was dead on when he pointed the fact that we are believing in a way that's going to end up how we act. From the American Night Journal, we're moved by the media. But in some way, it remains strange. The most wild can be tamed, but it must be released. The fear. There's things to fear everywhere, and some of it's just because it's not known, and of course it can drive a person crazy. The canyon, well, canyons are like caves in plain sight, aren't they? Cheyenne is about the identity of that place. Maybe a symbolism in its appearance. Mantras, well, I guess the extremes of life, regular and otherwise. Sometimes you must be the recipient of action. Sometimes you must be the doer of action. The crossroads. It's presented as a point of merging, but the points in between allow for some things to exist that are neither the one or the other, and not a blend of one or the other either. Forest Strong Sandals is one of those ones that talk about the traveler and regression in the current situation, or reminiscence towards moving forward. Miami Morning. Some days in some situations would make people think that Miami is a sort of paradise, wouldn't they? But you still want to get back to the regular world. And media is, of course, one of those ways. Bright flags. Well, the Vikings sometimes decorated their ships. And like pretty much every type of hero in myth, I mean, there's a mythic view of Viking, which is not quite the same thing as the actual Vikings. They were individuals for their women. The forum. People try to capture things and ruin it for them. American Night is about part of the goal of the journey is to not be ashamed of who you are, to not be held back from, your direction by yourself. From the Tape Noon Journal, well, there's assimilation, and people talk a lot about that. But what if assimilation is not about, you have to be like whatever stereotype of the country that you're in, right? But it's that you have this deep identity. And are you going to just absorb yourself in what society has decided for you and direct more people along that lines, or are you going to do something else? Tunnel, where dreams are born. Other cultures and a sense of sacredness in what we tend to not consider sacred, or practice as sacred, like food, might go through the movements of the mechanized life, or we could go towards the movements of development. Abandoned machines are a new type of graveyard. Mere indulgence tends to victimize. Worship, spirituality, religion is more about an ancient sense. It's about a sense of spiritual beings that we can be of the company of. The long sweep is one of those maiden lover crone stories, and what remains can be something valuable and wanted through each stage, through each game, through each scenery. City of Gold, well, vulnerability is ever present, isn't it? Through wealth that puts some cultures apart. In some way, this becomes as worthless and unusable. Or maybe it's only usable in a surface sort of way, as any other material culture lifestyle. We are responsible for things not even present. Cats on drugs. Well, obviously it's not just talking about getting your cats stoned. It's about how we as humans are perhaps the most animalistic of creatures. Something we're not used to. Something we didn't pursue. Could be what we end up with. Could be what we prefer. Sometimes serving our desires isn't the same thing as being good to ourselves or others. Sometimes, despite some sense or ability intellectually, it doesn't give us peace of mind. The form is an angel. Well, angel's rather ambiguous of a term in English, but perhaps we start in the best of modes and we're exposed to all sorts of light and darkness. We make transitions. We might return. We're supposed to return. We could be, for ourselves, as people speak of Jesus, for them. With the odd substances and the odd animals, nature teaches us. We form connections and are delivered from limited ways.